see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Okay, I know that look. It's the same one Sharon gave me the first time I ever spoke at a Christian church. She laughed and did one of those elbows to the person next to her, who was a stranger. And in her vintage, unfiltered way, Sharon said, you know, he's Jewish. Is this even allowed? She didn't know that the guy next to her was the associate minister, who said, well, do you see that guy up on the cross? He was Jewish too. To which Sharon said, gosh, that's a great point. You think the minister knows that? Folks, let me explain why we're here. I mean, in this room. Sharon grew up with religion, but during her college days, like so many young people, she got away from her faith. 50 years later, during her illness, she understandably started asking questions again. Hospice offered a chaplain, and Sharon initially didn't want the service. I'm the one who encouraged her to try it. Hugh Gardner showed up and made such an impact on Sharon that when we started to talk about the eventual service, I wanted the venue to feel right. It was more than just a venue where we could have it or we could sit enough people. It had to feel right. We also had neighbors, Doug and Zanita Benson, who came into our lives, and they were members of this church. So this Jewish boy drove down here one Saturday, and I sat in the very back without even telling the Bensons that I was here. And then I brought Sharon the next weekend to show her. She loved it. I then met the head pastor, Charisse, and asked her if we could do the service here. She was wonderful, and she said we could, before I added a caveat. Well, I don't need a pastor. She didn't hit me. She said, I completely understand and will be there for you in any capacity you need it. Where is Charisse? Oh, all right. Probably. I knew I couldn't do Sharon's service in a cold room somewhere or the Moose Lodge. So I hope you all realize that this just felt appropriate, not just for Sharon, but for her family and her friends. Sharon's siblings didn't see the program until the moment they walked in here with you. Nor do they know what I'm going to say today. That was deliberate, to allow them the full benefit of the emotions of this ceremony. That was so important to me. And where would Sharon be right now if she were in this room? She'd be sitting with you, and suddenly, like she did in any restaurant, she'd say, I need a better vantage point. We're changing seats. I prefer the seats over there. Every house we owned had an open floor plan and a great room, and she always wanted our big old torn chair to be where she could have the perfect vantage point. She wanted the vision of the TV, the kitchen, the front door, the hallway, the bathroom. Jeff, put the seat down. For those of you with a trivia board, it took me 30 seconds to include bathroom humor in this eulogy. So, Charisse, I hope it makes you a little nervous what I might say the rest of my eulogy later on. And if Sharon showed up today for her own ceremony, what would she be wearing? You laugh because it's perfect that we're in a church where we can actually say, God only knows. Sharon usually got dressed by just grabbing what was on the floor. It was good enough. Jeff, no one will notice the pajama bottoms, right? Sharon, everyone will notice. Story, stand up for a second, please. Here's our singer today. And I did that so that you can find her later with the appropriate words that I know you're going to want to say. The opening song was for Sharon's family, a family tradition they understand, and I don't need to explain it to you. I didn't find Story in the Yellow Pages. I met Story Condos Anderson for the first time when she was 12 years old and a student at my school. Somehow, and I'm not sure how it happened, but she found that the principal's office was a safe place to hang out. And oftentimes after the bell rang and I'd get all the kids to class, I'd come back to my office to find Story in it, sitting in the principal's chair, with her feet up on my desk. Story, class started, everybody's inside, you're late. To which she would open up my top drawer and say, I know where you keep the late slips, sign here. When she graduated from the school, she walked away with the top award that the school could give to the top student for academics, for character, for talent. Talent's an odd word, because we knew Story had so many talents, and yet, honestly, we didn't know she could sing. And I will tell you today, and I hope you understand these words, Her singing is well down the list of her top talents. And that's why she's here. We wouldn't have wanted anyone else to do this. I want to make it clear also today that there is no greater calling than to be a caregiver. So please don't feel sorry for me for the last 11 years. I was the lucky one. Maybe only some of you will understand this, but the 11 years I took care of Sharon since her illness represented some special times for me too, because love isn't about the best moments. Sometimes it's about the toughest, and it's about being with that person you want to be with when nothing else makes sense. So just know that I thank Sharon, too, for being able to experience and provide love and care in its highest form during her illness. Today isn't about just who passed. To me, it's always been about who the past have passed on. And Sharon wanted me to give a few quick comments to her family. But before I do that, let me also give a special thanks to the medical team of Dr. Maj, Miguel and Maddie, who always laid out the red carpet for Sharon, for Dr. Paul, Vashti Kyle, and of course our incredible hospice team. Sharon never wanted to be a burden for those she loved. She never wanted to be hooked up to machines. Never wanted to lose her dignity. Collectively, that team helped accomplish that. To Chaplain Hugh, you were terrific, and I apologize for posting that photo of you on Caring Bridge in bed with Sharon and 3 women. But to be fair, none of us mere mortals will ever achieve such an accomplishment. Nurse Rob was with Sharon for 6 months until Enloe Hospice folded, and yet came back to visit Sharon after that, just because. And in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy had the hardest time saying goodbye to the Scarecrow. It broke her heart. Nurse Pamela was my Scarecrow. And it'll be painful to lose her too. To Sharon's siblings, who she wanted me to talk about today, don't lose sight of today as a seminal moment. And Sharon made me promise to say a few words about each of you, separate from my eulogy at the end. The eulogy will be a roller coaster. I will make you laugh, I will make you cry, but what Sharon wanted more than anything else was to reach a tiny dormant nerve inside each of us that wants to make a difference. Hold me to that. First of all, to the little baby brother, Roddy as she called you. Sharon told me before I met you that every one of your childhood friends was 6'7" and 300 pounds. But she also said that she's not sure they ever liked you at all because they left their signature on every refrigerator on the block, and your mom was the best cook. Your big sister adored her little Roddy. Sharon spent her career as a teacher, but as you know, so did you. How could that be when you tell everyone you worked in Silicon Valley for big tech? No, Roddy, that's just how you made money. You dedicated your life helping those in need because you had the skills, the intellect, and the heart to do it. Roddy, you once said, I no longer was your brother-in-law. I had become your brother. Back at you. You don't need a teaching credential to be called a teacher. The definition of learning is a change of behavior, and you continue to help so many accomplish that. So when someone asks you what you do for a living, you tell them the truth from now on. You say, I enhance lives. The true definition, and you are the personification of that. It may be my mouth moving today, but the words come from your sister. I am so proud of you. Next in line is little Mary Madeline, as Sharon called you. Sharon said your nickname growing up was the Boss. I first met you when you lived on Cessna. We drove from Chico, from Marin, to Chico from Marin, walked in your house, and you were up on the kitchen counter. Before even saying hello to Sharon's new boyfriend, you held up 2 tiles. Sharon, should I go with the blue tile and the white grout, or the white tile and the blue grout? Sharon quickly told you to go with the blue tile, and you yelled at her. All she did was glance at me with a quick head nod. Once again, the wild child grew up. You changed professions and became a teacher too. It may be my mouth moving, but the words are from your sister. You always called me your sissy, and I loved it. I hope you think of me even a fraction of the time I will be thinking of you. And to little Barbara Jean, let me again quote the great American philosopher Wizard of Oz, who told the Tin Man, you are not judged by how much you love, but how much others love you. That's your currency with Sharon. She adored you. You fought as youngsters and then clearly became each other's person. It may be my mouth moving today, but the words are from Sharon. Yes, I admit, I stole your clothes when we were kids, but to be honest, I wish I kept them to wear now so that you would always be with me. And to Richard, I know you've heard plenty of speeches from me over the years, but none so heartfelt as this one. We all talk about legacy. Few people live it. Your mother was one of those. Sharon's fondest memory was driving to the Crib Club in San Anselmo and playing a game of trying to get out of the car first. Oftentimes I'd lock the car so I could get out and she couldn't, because we both wanted to see you light up when you first saw us. All parents know that feeling. I used to yell when I got to the door, "Yabba dabba doo," just like Fred Flintstone when I saw you, until your teachers asked me to stop because all the kids would yell "Yabba dabba doo" too. So we came up with a signal. I'd come to the door, look through the window, and pump my arm 3 times. Yabba dabba doo. And the kids would yell it. Mom refused to participate, said we were being childish. I told her it was my goal to someday for her to join that stage of development. Never lose sight that being a mom was her greatest joy. And she made me tell you that wherever you go, she will always have our backs, and therefore you will always be together. One thing for certain, she made me promise, and you will see, is it's never too late to be the person you were meant to be. It's my mouth moving, but the words come from your mom. This isn't goodbye. It's forever. I asked Lois Kamey to start off today. Lois was our rock throughout, and I've often said that if one can be reincarnated, I want to come back to this earth as little Loisie McMurtry. Loisie, your turn, babe.
Hello, am I coming through well? I'm a little bit nervous to speak in front of all of you, which I shouldn't be because I was a teacher for many, many years. But at back to school night, I'd always say to the parents, well, I'm kind of nervous, and they'd say, well, why? I said, because adults listen. The students weren't so great. They were like thinking about lunch or whatever. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here to make Sharon's service so special. I know many of you traveled long distances, and I'm sure that Sharon would be touched and appreciative that you're all here. Sharon was loved by many and had a lot of friends. Thanks, Jeff, for your amazing speech and for the care you gave Sharon for these last 11 years. I have no doubt that your 24/7 support significantly contributed to Sharon's lengthy survival and probably, even more importantly, contributed to the quality of her life. There were some really, really tough times, but to some degree, those were compensated for by the many happy days that made it all worthwhile. Sharon spent her days visiting friends, making new friends, and most importantly, spending time with her siblings and family. Sharon adored her family, as Jeff said, and that's so true. We all owe Jeff a tremendous debt of gratitude. As Jeff said, my name now is Lois Kamey, but when I first met Sharon, I was Loisie McMurtry. I have so many memories of Sharon that I could speak for hours, but of course I won't. No, I won't, and you probably don't want me to either. I first met Sharon 58 years ago when we were moving into our dorm at Chico State. Our dorm was a small, fairly new off-campus residence called the Debutante. Embarrassing, right? Well, it didn't take us very long before we started calling our residence the Deb, for obvious reasons. Our parents had chosen a debutante because it was small, all female, and had a house mother that our parents thought would keep a close eye on us and make sure we didn't get into mischief. Well, good luck with that. I clearly remember my first impression of Sharon. That very first day, we passed in the hallway as we headed towards our assigned rooms. And I looked at Sharon, I glanced at her briefly, and I thought, that's the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Those eyes. It took a while for Sharon and I to become close friends. However, I have a few fleeting memories of Sharon during those first few months before we really knew each other. I had made friends with Sharon's roommate, Nancy, and one day I went to Nancy and Sharon's room to hang out. As I walked in the room, I heard someone singing very loudly in the shower. It was Sharon belting out, a little off-key, I must add, a robust version of the song, "Life is Just a Bowl of Cherries," at the top of her lungs. I remember thinking, this person is really funny. My next impression of Sharon was watching her wildly ride up to our dorm on her clunky one-speed bike. She had a late afternoon class and did not want to miss dinner. She was wearing her Mother Butler Catholic school girl uniform plaid skirt. Yes, she thought she could work that into her regular wardrobe and no one would notice. Her braids were flying madly behind her, and her slim little legs pedaled at a high rate of speed. Elbows up, knees at chest level. She looked just like a Norman Rockwell painting. Again, I thought, this person is very funny. Another memory is driving up to the dorm after Thanksgiving break. Sharon was in the parking lot holding a toaster that was literally on fire. Smoke billowed everywhere. Sharon had tried to make a grilled cheese sandwich in the toaster, not anticipating what would happen when the cheese melted. I don't know if the toaster survived or not. Vintage Sharon. As time went on, I realized that Sharon was far more than just a pretty face or a very funny person. I recognized that Sharon and I had a lot in common. We both loved and missed our families and our friends from home. Sharon talked so much about her family and high school friends that I felt like I knew all of them personally. We were both good students. We went to class, we did our best, and we got good grades. We did not want to disappoint our parents and never considered leaving college or, heaven forbid, getting married. On the other hand, we both loved to laugh and do silly things. We did not take ourselves or life too seriously. We both greatly enjoyed the newfound freedoms of college life, and we went on to live together for 6 more years. Sharon had a lot of talents and interests. As Jeff told you, Sharon was a creative and gifted teacher. And I think that was due to the fact that Sharon adored children. Our grandchildren loved Auntie Sharoner. Whenever we visited, Sharon would feed them ice cream and then organize them into a science experiment. They will greatly miss Sharon. Sharon was a good athlete and especially loved tennis. She learned to play in college and from early on had a killer forehand. Her timing was impeccable, and I remember feeling fearful when I would see her step around her backhand and belt the ball. However, my fondest tennis memories of Sharon and tennis aren't about skills. One day, when we were in college, I watched Sharon play a match in her class tournament. I think her opponent might have been Kathy Livingston Franklin, who's here today. I'll have to ask her. Sharon often wore her hair in a high ponytail when playing tennis. She would pull her hair back tightly, attach which was called a switch, which is kind of a hair extension, and it looked really good, actually, and it was quick, and it kept the hair out of her eyes. Some of you are laughing because you remember Sharon wearing that. On that day of her match, she had on this high ponytail, the switch ponytail. As the match progressed, I heard people shrieking, and I saw what appeared to be a rodent on the court. Well, no, it was Sharon's switch ponytail. It had flown off her head in the middle of a point and looked exactly like a critter. That would only happen to Sharon. Sharon lost more matches than she should have because she lacked a killer instinct. I remember one occasion when Sharon and I had both entered a tennis club at our tennis tournament at our club. This was years later, and Sharon's match was scheduled before mine. So as I was walking to my match, I had a few minutes to stop and watch her play, and she was playing so well. She had won the first set. She was up in the second set. She was playing as well as I'd ever seen her. I went on to play my match, and when I went back to the clubhouse at the end of my match, Sharon was looking really despondent. I said, "Oh no, did you get injured? What happened?" And she said, "Well, I lost my match." I said, "How could you have lost? You were playing so great." And she said, "Well, when we passed, as we changed sides, my opponent started to cry. And she looked so sad that I decided I would let her win a couple of games." So she did. And then, of course, her opponent got some confidence, the momentum changed, and Sharon lost. I said, "Sharon, you can't do that. Tennis is competitive. You've got to always try. You need to close it out." And she said, "Oh, no, it's okay. I was hot, tired, and thirsty." Vintage Sharon. Sharon was a very good cook, a true foodie. She saw food as a way of showing love. I remember many occasions after Sharon had been ill for years, she would show up at our house with delicious soups and desserts. I would say to Sharon, "What's wrong with this picture? I should be taking you food." One of her teacher friends said that when Sharon would prepare soup for the staff, Teachers would race to the teacher's room, fearing that they would miss out on the delicious soup. Another interesting occurrence with Sharon is when you asked her for her recipe. That same teacher said she asked Sharon for her recipe for clam chowder. So Sharon, this is how it went. Sharon said, well, I go in my pantry and I look for some potatoes, or maybe some leeks, or maybe some onions. And then I know I need some broth. So I either might get some milk or cream, or maybe some broth, maybe some white wine. And then you need to throw in some spices, you know, whatever you really like or whatever you have handy. And it went on and on like that. Sharon did not realize that many of us really need to measure and to have ingredient lists when we need to cook something. Sharon was very generous. When I visited, she never failed to try to give me something as I left. Sometimes it was pears, avocados, or whatever. She literally was the type of person who would give you the shirt off her back. And that's exactly what she did. In her last couple of years, she had very few clothes because she had given them all away to her friends. Over the past 11 years, Sharon and I spent well over 2,000 hours together. I actually did the math. We laughed, reminisced, and watched hours and hours of television. We watched all the seasons of Downton Abbey, The Crown, 6 seasons of Call the Midwife, plus many videos reflecting Sharon's eclectic interests. Cooking shows, cheerleading training, shows about people living on cliffs in remote parts of Africa, programs about islands exploding, or about people who were best friends with orangutans. You get the picture. When I would leave each day, Sharon would inevitably thank me for visiting and tell me that she loved me. She loved her friends and appreciated all your calls, texts, emails, visits, letters, gifts, all cheerful reminders that you all cared for her deeply. One of Sharon's high school friends even sent her a weekly riddle that kept us all laughing. Many of you have recently reached out to me and shared some of your memories of Sharon. You described her as witty, highly intelligent, resilient, creative. I mean, who else would defrost the Thanksgiving turkey by throwing it into the swimming pool? You said she had an infectious laugh and thought out of the box. No subject was off limits for Sharon, and that's the truth. But most of all, you emphasized her kindness. I'm sure that if Sharon were to look down at this gathering today, she would be worried that some of you might be hot, maybe uncomfortable, perhaps hungry. I can hear her saying, "Jeffy, did you order enough food?" That was the essence of Sharon, always worried about others, and we all miss her greatly.
Thanks for that introduction, Jeff. Okay. This feels so weird. Whether you knew her as Sharoner, Cher, or Mrs. Sloan, Sharon was so much to so many. But luckily for me, Sharon was my second mother for 43 years. From the moment I bit down on an apple in 4th grade at St. Mark's and cracked my tooth in half, my life would be forever changed. My parents couldn't be reached, as this was decades before cell phones, so Jeff, head of the upper school, took me to the dentist. To say thank you, my parents took Jeff and a date to dinner. Who was he dating? None other than my 4th grade teacher, Sharon DeRuyter. I remember so much about that year. Sharon reading classic novels to us after lunch, perched on her stool, her bright blue eyes as expressive as the characters' voices, and wishing I could flip my hair over my shoulders the exact way she did. As Mrs. DeRuyter and Mr. Sloan grew closer with my parents, their days playing tennis together at the Raffel Racquet Club would leave would lead to evening dinners at our house or theirs, which my sister and I secretly loved because they were the it couple, the it teachers. 2 years later, at their wedding, I had the honor of holding part of the huppah, knowing I would never see a more gorgeous bride. Ironically, the definition of huppah is a canopy under which a Jewish couple stands during their wedding ceremony, symbolizing the home they will build together and welcoming community. And welcome me in they did. Seeing both of them become parents to their beloved Richard was amazing. They truly relished the roles of mom and dad. Just look at all the pictures in the lobby. But when I moved into their Almendia house, they suddenly found themselves with a toddler and a teenager. I was part au pair to Richard, but also part angst-filled daughter. They parented me through junior and senior year, right up the street at PV, taking on the sudden task of setting ground rules for dating. They vetted my suitors and ultimately approved of the boy I met senior year, who 22 years later became my husband. Sharon even taught me how to be stealthy, like when we tiptoed into Richard's room at night to gently rub Carmex on his little chapped lips as he slept. Jeff and I pulled off the ultimate stealth move when we asked him to officiate our surprise wedding. My most treasured picture of Sharon is the look on her face at dinner when she realized she was about to become a mother of the bride. They loved me as their own, traveling to Tucson for my sorority pledge presents and college graduation. Jeff, how about that car ride on Ina? And later to Memphis for the birth of our son, Evan, who Sharon proudly called her grandson. Over the years, she'd always ask about his annual checkups, genuinely fascinated by his milestones and growth percentiles, often comparing them to her friends' grandchildren. She was a statistician at heart. Sharon was decades ahead of athleisure with her uniform of pleated tennis skirts and slouchy socks, but nothing beat her endless collection of claw clips and hair extensions like Loisy shared. She'd spend too much time trying to perfect an updo, laughing when I called her hairdo a hair don't, while I'd tell her, Cher, your hair is perfect, just the way it is. Then there was her eyewear collection, proving you could never own too many pairs, even if you can never find one when you really need it. I take after her. Sharon brought abundance and excellence to everything she did. Sure, Sharon taught in the GATE program, which stands for Gifted and Talented Education, but she embodied GATE as a gifted and talented educator. She had an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Their TiVo was constantly packed with National Geographic, Anthony Bourdain, Jeopardy, and this may come as a shock, Real Housewives. And during her beloved Grand Slam events like Wimbledon or the French Open, she couldn't resist trying to pronounce every player's name in their authentic native accent. If you ever dined out with her at a Mexican or Italian restaurant, she would order in her best accent, and though a bit embarrassing, it was just another Sharonism. Her beautiful mind bled into everything she touched, especially her written words. A card from Sharon was a work of art, written in 2 or 3 ink colors, maybe by design or maybe because the pen ran out of ink, but inevitably causing delivery delays. One of the last things she mailed to us in Memphis was Evan's 8th birthday present. His Nana Shani selected a Suncatcher crystal prism, accompanied by index cards covered front and back with her handwritten explanation of light refraction and rainbow illustrations. Not at the top of most 8-year-olds' birthday wish lists, but you cannot buy that on Amazon or at Target. It will be treasured by us always. Cher was my teacher, my professional role model, my second mother, and an indelible bright light to everyone in her orbit. I will hold her in my heart forever. I love you, Richard and Jeff.
Sharon saw all these people, she would say one of her famous, "Oh my stars, there's so many people here." So this is really a treat and means so much to our family. So yes, I am Barbara. I am, too loud? Oh. I'm Barbara. I am the middle sister. And because Sharon and I were only 11 months apart, she was my Irish twin. And I'll share a few anecdotes. Heaven only knows why my sweet mother, Betty, many years ago, had Sharon and me share a double bed. I mean, what could be wrong with that? That was like 3rd and 4th grade. So every night, Sharon and I would write on each other's backs the name of a kid who was absent in our class. I mean, fascinating, huh? But we thought it was hysterical. And so there was a lot of writing, a lot of guessing, but not much sleeping. So many times, Mama Betty would come in, "Girls, that's enough, okay? Go to bed." We wouldn't really pay attention. We'd write some more and guess some more. Finally, she would come in and say, "Okay, that's it. I'm sending in your dad." And that did it. We took that very seriously. But we always fell asleep giggling. When we were in 7th and 8th grade, Sharon and I shared a bathroom getting ready in the morning, which was always a little bit tense. It was the 60s, so Sharon was, working towards becoming very mature and kind of cool. And so every morning, and I was a bit of a goody two-shoes, so I would come out of the bathroom, "Mom, Sharon's ratting her hair again." And so she would come at me with the rat tail comb, and I would run into the bedroom, and it always just kind of made me feel good because Sharon was getting in trouble, and it wasn't me for a change. When riding in the car, Sharon always, no matter what, was in a teaching mode. So she liked to play this game called Rhyming Bloopers. And rhyming bloopers is essentially an adjective and then a noun, and you get to guess it. So something like a crimson sleeping area. That's a red bed, okay? And once you got into it, you could understand it. But it made the miles go by. And she thought it was really funny because one time she had all the cousins in the back, and she goes, "Okay, kids, here it is. What is a darling fart?" And the kids, of course, are giggling and snickering, and finally she says, "Come on, guys, that's a cute toot." So she loved to do that stuff. Sharon loved children, and especially little humans and babies. She loved my granddaughter, Micaiah, so much. I would send a video to her every time I was with Micaiah, which was a lot, and she always embraced it and would ask a million questions and just got so into, and I know she loved, those later years, all of your grandchildren, those of you who have them. That was so special to her. And Micaiah and Courtney were the first people to come to me after Jeff called me when Sharon passed. It was only in 5 minutes, and to have those two little people with me meant everything. So there are so many stories and anecdotes that I could share, but in the interest of brevity, and I might become too overwhelmed with tears, I will end by sharing that the last year of Sharon's life, whenever we talked on the phone, which was a lot, we always ended it with, "And I'll always love you," and she would say it back. And once, back in February, I opened my suitcase, and she had sent this note. It's so random, it's so silly, but it's so Sharon. You can see it's the real deal. And on the 7th day, God made Barbara Jean and Sharon Ann. But it was Barbara who kept them on the straight and narrow. She straightened out Cain and Abel too. "I am weeping with your departure. Loved having you here, my sister, and then kind of a wonky heart. So this is very special to me. On some days, I just, I will feel just so overwhelmed with sadness. And when I do, what I do is I think of Sharon floating up in the heavens, counting the stars, naming the constellations, wearing something gauzy and pink and yellow, probably with a lot of random safety pins in the seams and the waist, probably at least 20 years old, but she would look beautiful. And that was my Irish twin. I miss her.
My earliest memory of Sharon was when I called her Bika. Apparently I couldn't make the sh sound, and she called me Flea Flea. Fast forward to our college years, actually my college years, and even though Sharon was teaching, she was out of college, 6 years older, we were roommates, and we lived together at the Sheridan Square Apartments all through college, my college days. And traveling around Chico with Sharon was good and bad. I thought I was kind of cute, but when I was with Sharon, I was chopped liver. She was cute and bubbly and petite, and I was her tall, skinny sidekick. But it was worth it. We, over the years, starting then and continuing on, got into lots of mischief. And one story I'll share with you, Barbara mentioned you are gonna tell that story, aren't you? We did a lot of traveling together, and we had driven to my parents' house in Santa Rosa from Chico, and on the way home, almost always I drove. She liked me to drive her car, and we're on Highway 20 going east toward Chico, and I realize we're running out of gas. So I pull over, and immediately we start trying to call AAA, and cell phones weren't working. So after trying to figure out, Sharon actually jumped out of the car and was trying it outside. A van pulls up, and there's a family who said, we can give you a ride to somewhere where your phone will work. And so I said, well, I'll stay here because I've got Lucy. And if you know me well, you know that Lucy was my dog who went everywhere with us. I kind of never lived that one down. Sharon afterwards said, why would you let me get into the car alone? Well, because I had Lucy. And in defense, it was a family, a very nice family that gave her a ride. So off she goes, and time's passing, and I'm waiting, and then a highway patrol car pulls up facing me, and a guy gets out of the car and taps on the window and says, are you all right? And I said, yeah, why? What's going on? She goes, well, we have Sister Sharon. And I'm thinking, what do you mean? So she had gotten to somewhere and was making the call and was still there, but he said, we have had a report that somebody had you at gunpoint. So finally, Sharon shows up in another highway patrol car, and we waited and waited for AAA, and we never really knew what the gunpoint was about. All we could do was think that perhaps Sharon trying to use her cell phone outside, and it turns out it was a retired sheriff who made the call. So I don't know why he didn't stop and help us, but instead, I think if we were going to be killed, it would have happened long, long before. And then there was another time, we definitely had trouble with gas gauges. We were driving to my dear sister-in-law Linda's mother's memorial service, and Sharon picked me up at a conference in Jeff's car and immediately says, "Here, you drive." So, get in the car, we're going through the canyon to Quincy, and I glanced down. "Sharon, we don't have any gas." Oh, and in both instances, it's like, "Well, wait a minute, you're driving, but wait a minute, it's your car. Why would you pick me up with no gas?" This goes on for quite a while, of course. And then finally we thought, we're not gonna get back to Chico. I know, we'll go to Beldentown. I'm sure they have a gas. So we did, and we stopped at the restaurant, bar, hotel, what else? Store, yeah, all one. And we were told, "Nope, sorry, the guy who has the key to the pump, he's out of town." So we call AAA and they say, "Oh, we've gotten way too many calls today. It's going to be at least 3 hours." So there we are, stuck there. So what do two girls do? We start ordering drinks and we play ping pong and we spend the day talking with Gilbert and Max. And we never did make it to the memorial service. But that was kind of the way we rolled. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I have one more, but I'm not sure it's for, all right.
Human consumption.
It's probably the best one. And you, go back to, I'm in college and she's just starting her teaching career. We would go from Chico to our parents' place in the Bay Area. And back in the day, and I know some of you may relate to this, back in the day when we traveled, we smoked pot. We got stoned to make long drives. And I know darn well there are some of you who did that. And to my son, who's never heard this story, I'm sorry. But we're driving along on our way home, and Sharon keeps complaining that she can't see, it's too dark. She goes, the headlights aren't helping. What's going on? Finally, I look over, she's got her sunglasses on, and it's pitch dark outside. Yeah, those things happen when you drive stoned. And then, I know. He just cleared his throat. I told you. And then later on in the drive, she starts whining about the pain in her leg. God, it hurts so much. This goes on and on. Finally, she lifts up and she's got a pop top. Raise your hand if you're old enough to know what a pop top is. It's in her thought. She's been feeling that for miles and miles. So we definitely got our together in time by the time we were married and had children and those sort of things. But there were some wild times. And I'm just going to keep it there because I don't want to stand here and cry in front of you.
Alrighty then. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rod, or Roderick, or Rod Jr., or the little brother. The movie star Katharine Hepburn once said, "If you follow all the rules, you miss all the fun." Sharon didn't just agree with that sentiment. She seemed to live it every single day. She had an absolute vibrant love for life, but she also firmly believed that rules were merely polite suggestions that didn't always apply to her. To Sharon, a rule book wasn't necessarily a boundary, but more of a guideline, subject to interpretation. Being in the kitchen with Sharon was always one of my favorite things, though we had slightly different approaches to putting a meal on the table. She rarely followed a recipe, and it didn't matter if it came from the most famous chef in the world. Sharon would look at it, smile, and immediately change it, because don't you know, her way was quite simply better. She would often say, "Don't you think this would be better if we just..." and then offer up some sort of suggestion that wasn't necessarily wrong, but it could be a little frustrating as a sous chef in her kitchen. I will never forget one, Loisy stole my thunder. I will never forget one Thanksgiving where she forgot to thaw the turkey. For anyone else, this would be a culinary crisis. For Sharon, it was just a problem-solving opportunity. When we arrived in Chico the day before Thanksgiving, we noticed something floating and bobbing in the Sloan's pool. To Sharon, the physics made perfect sense. Large body of water, large block of ice, problem solved. She didn't see a single thing wrong with it. Meanwhile, half the family spent the afternoon researching whether frozen turkey wrapping would prevent chlorine water from oozing into the bird. In the end, a perfectly delectable Thanksgiving turkey. Way back in 1979, our folks decided to do a home exchange with a family from Germany. I was in high school, and Sharon was 29, so we were the perfect roommates for such a trip. While visiting a friend in Bavaria, Sharon was invited to stay on longer as my folks and I went back to our home base. It seemed innocent enough. Sharon would use the address and leverage the excellent German rail system to get back to her family. Only knowing 10 words of German or so, Sharon found herself lost in southern Germany as she apparently boarded a train heading in the wrong direction. Since this was all long before cell phones, she could not contact us, and we had no idea of the ordeal she was enduring. We waited for her at the local rail station, expecting her to jump off a specific train, but instead she came from a different direction with tears in her eyes, but oh so glad to see us. Somehow she had found her way back to our little village, being the resourceful and diligent traveler that she was. A pretty American woman with tears in her eyes seemed to have enlisted just the right amount of help. Her fearless, adventuresome spirit extended to the people she loved most in the world. And Sharon adored children. She would bend over backwards to spend time with her nieces and nephews because we didn't live close. She constantly craved photos and updates, and she would travel to see them at any chance she got. On one of those visits, she decided to take our 2-year-old daughter, Madeline, to the local park just down the street. When they finally returned home, we asked Madeline how her afternoon was. Madeline looked at us and innocently revealed the ultimate rule bend. She said, "Auntie Sharon didn't know where was I?" And the truth finally spilled out. We learned that Sharon had struck up a conversation with another parent at the park, completely charming them, no doubt, and Madeline had slipped away for a few minutes. Sharon, of course, had sworn our 2-year-old to absolute secrecy. She didn't see it as a crisis. To her, it was just a little unscheduled exploring. All ended perfectly well, but it became the ultimate family joke. She brought that spirit of rule flexibility to most engagements in her life. If a board game got boring, she rewrote the instructions on the spot. If a doctor gave her a medical order, she would patiently explain to them that she had a better idea. I'm sure there are a few of her doctor's caregivers in the room today who can attest to her strong will and persuasiveness. By now, she should probably have an honorary medical degree from Stanford University. But as fiercely independent and rule-bending as Sharon was, the greatest anchor in her life was her husband, Jeff. Jeff, you looked after her and cared for her in a way that absolutely no one else could. You loved her completely, deeply, and fiercely, right to the very end. Because of your incredible devotion, Sharon was able to stay right where she wanted to be, in her own home. Even when things became extremely difficult. And through every single hardship, you never let us feel distant. You kept our entire family and all of our friends in the loop, carrying us along with you every single step of the way. You shielded her, you honored her, and you gave her the ultimate gift of dignity and comfort. We love you, Jeff, and we are profoundly grateful to you. Life with Sharon was never boring, never predictable, and always full of fun. She rewrote the scripts, she ignored the boundaries, and she filled our lives with stories we will be laughing about for generations. She showed us all that the world is a lot more flexible than we think. If only you have the charm, the sweetness, and the confidence to bend it. We will miss her stubborn brilliance, her beautiful heart, and the chaotic joy she brought into all of our lives. Thank you.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go, but I know I'll think of you every step of the way. And I will always love you. Will always love you. Bittersweet memories, that is all I'm taking with me. So goodbye, please don't cry. We both know I'm not what you need, and I will always love you. Life treats you kind, and I hope you have all you dreamed of, and I wish you joy and happiness. Above all this, I wish you love, and I will always love you. I will always love you. I will always love you. I will always love you.
I hope you understand why I asked Story to sing these songs as opposed to just playing a recording. Whitney Houston couldn't have done the same feeling as that. Let me get to the trivia board of what you've wanted to know for 41 years. How did two people of such disparate backgrounds get attracted to each other? Sharon grew up in a traditional two-parent, upper-middle-class Roman Catholic family. stay-at-home mom, working executive father. Conversely, I grew up with a single immigrant mother who had to escape the Nazis in 1938, leaving behind her home, her family, her country, because she was Jewish. She came to the States, married a bum, had 2 sets of twins, and raised us by herself. We struggled at times. And yet I would say Sharon and I had identical childhoods. How could I do that? Because the main message we heard at home, I think, was the same, simply taught in a different language. My mother may work 3 jobs to help make ends meet, but she'd always be home late at night to make sure we were safe and in bed. That door would open, and my little immigrant mother, called meine Mutter, would share the following mantra in her native language. Wir haben nicht viel, aber wir haben alles. Which, if your German is a little rusty today, translates to, we don't have much. But I tell you, we have everything. Wir haben die Sonne der Mond, which means we have the sun and the moon, und die Himmels and the heavens. But most of all, wir haben das Brot, die Familie, verstanden meine Kinder, aber die Familie und die Liebe. We have bread, we have family. Do you understand, children? We have family. And when you have that, you'll always be surrounded with love. With that, she'd turn and leave. She was done. Oh, but not really. She'd always stop momentarily under the threshold. You see, there was one more line. Her most important, powerful, her most memorable line of all. Und bitte nicht vergessen. Which means, and don't you forget it. She would whisper under her breath. So to everyone here today, I'm about to give you that same message. Und bitte nicht vergessen. The best qualities of Sharon that were so easy to remember, they were also so hard to forget. Und bitte nicht vergessen, that girl with the movie star looks and the daily Lucille Ball personality. Und bitte nicht vergessen, meeting with Sharon's parents, Rod and Betts, asking them for permission to marry their daughter. Rod immediately looked at Betts and said, this time, we're going to do it right. And some of you here know what he meant by this time. He then looked at Betts and gave her a head nod. Oh my God. All guys know what the head nod means. Betts tilted her head up at the much taller Rod, pursed her lips. Actually means the same as the head nod, it's just a gender thing. He then looked at me and said, young man, and let me stop right there. I promise you I will always remember your stories if you refer to me as young man. He said, young man, have you ever bought or sold any real estate in your life? What an odd question to ask. You didn't waste any time getting into my finances, did you, sir? He said, I don't much care about your finances. Just answer the question. Well, as a matter of fact, when I was in my late teens, I owned a Datsun 240Z. I loved that car. But I sold it to get enough for a down payment to buy a small condominium in Greenbrae. When it doubled in value, I sold that and bought the house in Santa Fe. How did I do, sir? I already told you, I don't care how you did. If you bought or sold any real estate, then you're well aware that the seller has to complete a disclosure page listing all known defects of the property before you buy it. Sharon's mother and I would like to do the same today. Well, if that's your attempt at a metaphor, sir, save your breath. I don't think your daughter has a single fault. He said, that's exactly why we're doing this. You're never going to be able to say, we didn't try. So let's just start off with a couple of easy ones, easy and obvious ones. You know Bets and I have 4 children, right? 3 daughters and a son. Rod Jr. is perfect. There was then a pregnant pause, a long silence. He said, now understand this and understand it well. You marry one of our daughters, you will soon feel like you have married them all. If you're enjoying a nice quiet dinner, reading a book, watching a movie, and the phone rings, we'd suggest you not answer it. It'll be one of the sisters calling Sharon. They will speak for a minimum of 45 endless minutes. Hang up. Same sister will call back only 5 minutes later with the following line. Oh, hi, Sharon. What's new? And burn another 45. Get used to it. He then segued. Now, more importantly, has Sharon ever talked to you about her DNA and a particular gene we all think she carries? You have me a bit concerned, sir. No, she has not. Tell me more. He said, well, ever since birth, her mother and I, her siblings, and every single person who's ever known her would tell you that Sharon has a particular gene that manifests itself every single day. Have you ever noticed something a bit odd that happens to Sharon on a daily basis? Weird, funny, bizarre, need I say, out of the ordinary? No, sir. I have not. Tell me more. I'm not going to do that, he said. You're actually going to tell me. I find it much more effective, self-discovery and all. So let's back up here to, let's say, your first date. May as well start on day 1. Anything out of the ordinary occur? It always does. Well, I hate to prove your theory wrong, sir, but let me be the first, because Sharon and I had an absolutely wonderful first date. Now, wait a minute. There was a little something we laugh about now. Maybe that's what you're talking about. It was a Thursday. I remember that so clearly. We had just finished a long teaching day in San Rafael. The faculty tended to walk out in the parking lot together. Sharon was actually the aggressor. Came up to me and said, hey, Jeff, I'd really like to get to know you better. Can we spend some alone time tonight? Maybe go to dinner or something? Pretty cute. Sure. So I told her we'd meet at Riccardo's Ristorante, a cute little Italian place in downtown San Anselmo, wine bottles hanging from the ceiling. A few of you have been there. We got in our respective cars for the short drive to San Anselmo. I got there first. That's no surprise to any of you. Got our table. No Sharon. 20 minutes later, no Sharon. Half hour, no Sharon. Waiter came to the table and asked, are you Jeff? Indeed I am. Will you have a phone call through those swinging double doors to the kitchen? Young people in this room, if you don't know what swinging double doors are, YouTube it. I walked through those doors and saw a rotary wall phone. Young people in this room, if you don't know what a rotary wall phone is, YouTube it. I picked up the receiver and, as you might have done, did the same thing. Oh, hi, Sharon, flat tire? She burst into tears. Oh, Jeff, I can't find my car. Well, Sharon, that's impossible. There are only about 8 spaces in our school parking lot. I know. Jeff, my car's been stolen. I'm sure of it. I'm so embarrassed. This was going to be our first date. I wanted it to be so special. If you help me right now, I will make you a promise you can take it to the bank. I will be very easy tonight. Fortunately, at a young age, Sharon learned the art of effective negotiation. So I told her, to sit tight, I'd call the police, and I'd be right there. When I drove up to the school, I got out of my car to tell Sharon the fantastic news. Sharon, I talked to the police. They said your car was not stolen. It was repossessed. You hadn't made the last 4 payments. This was our first date. And I'm already out over $1,000 getting her car back. Sir, you're laughing. Rod Sr. did not. But he did turn to Bets and give her a head nod. She pursed her lips. And he only said 4 words in response to me. Go on, young man. And so, I did. The very next night was a Friday, right? We were invited to a school potluck. I was going to be able to try Sharon's famous Chinese chicken salad for the first time. You all know what a great cook she was. The car behind us got to taste it before I did because Sharon put it on top of the roof of the car and drove off, and it smacked against their windshield in the process. This was our second date. And I'm out another $250 replacing a broken windshield. Sir, you're laughing. Oh, Rod did not. He turned to Bets and gave her a head nod. She pursed her lips. And for the first time ever during someone's eulogy, we're going to have some audience participation. He only said 4 words in response to me. What were they, folks? And so, I did. That first Christmas together, I surprised Sharon with a trip to Club Med in the Bahamas on Paradise Island. It was a tennis resort with clay courts. Y'all know we were big into tennis in those days, and all we really wanted to do was get out of a town where everyone knew us and have some much-needed privacy. As soon as we got to a room, Sharon said, Jeff, I saw in the brochure they have a beautiful spa down by the ocean. Can we do that first thing? You bet. So we changed into our bathing suits, walked down to the spa, only to find 8 other couples from 8 different countries. All had the same idea. And they were already in the spa, making out, frolicking, drinking from crystal wine glasses, not wanting to disturb said lovebirds. Sharon slowly and quietly took off her Club Med-issued white terry cloth robe and tiptoed into the spa, only to find there was no first step. Sending crystal wine glasses crashing to the ground with shouts of the F word in 8 different languages, 9 if you include Sharon's English. We just flew 4,000 miles for anonymity. We lost it within the first 5 minutes for the rest of the trip. And just like Olympic records are made to be broken, oh, so too were Sharon's most memorable faux pas. I know each of you has your own gold medal winner for Sharon. You want to hear mine, at least for today? She had a doctor's appointment, was running late. That's no surprise. She was starving. Now, you or I might grab an apple or a banana when we're in a hurry. Sharon opened up the refrigerator and took out 1 frozen mini cream puff. Breakfast of champions to you. And it required maybe 2 or 3 seconds in a microwave to be just perfect. Oh, but she felt like she didn't have the time. So she got in the car for the short 10-minute drive across town to Dr. Vimily Paul's office, and she thought to herself, where's the best place for me to defrost this said frozen mini cream puff? She didn't put it on top of the car's heater vent. Oh, no, my friends, that gene was working full-time that day. She took it and she placed it inside of her panties, thinking that was the best place for it to defrost, and disregarded the fact that it would probably alter its flavor, don't you think? Oh, you think I'm done. You know Sharon. She started driving, turned on the radio, thought about the daily dozen chores she had to do that day, and she completely forgot that there was a mini cream puff defrosting inside of her hoo-hoo. She got to Dr. Vimley Paul's office, got through an entire 25-minute exam, got back in the car, put the keys in the ignition, put it in reverse, looked in the rearview mirror just in time to see Sammy Dog leaping from the back seat to the front seat and diving headfirst into Sharon's crotch and going to town on the now fully defrosted and oozing through her pants, white cream. It was at that exact moment, oh boy, did she scream. And like many of you in this room, if not every one of you, I spent the majority of my life since that day hoping for a similar experience. Yet the most important und bitte nicht vergessen was that that gene only manifested itself a few seconds out of every day. You see, for the other 23 hours and 59 minutes, Sharon was loving, considerate, and kind. She'd be the first one to show up at your house with some homemade soup if you were sick. The first one to volunteer for committees. The first one to get visibly upset if she saw violence on television, especially to children. So what do people like that choose to do for a career? You only think you know the answer. There used to be a radio broadcaster named Paul Harvey who started his broadcast by saying, "Now it's time for the rest of the story." Most of you remember Sharon as a fourth grade teacher. That was not her first job. Her first job was in special education. She had a special ed credential, but I call it a special ed credential. Her first job was in Red Bluff, about 45 minutes north of here, fairly low socioeconomic. And Sharon's first classroom had an acronym called the EMR class. Now, we're in a room full of educators. Raise your hand if you know what EMR stands for. We have a couple. EMR at the time stood for the Educable Mentally Retarded. And Sharon had 34 students in one classroom, ages 8 to 18, no AIDS, Morgan. Can you only imagine? Let's back up here for a second. I want to take you back to when you were 5 years old. Can't remember? Let me make it tougher for you. Labor Day when you were 5 years old. Still can't? Let me make it extremely easy for every one of you. The day after Labor Day. Why do we all know that? Because when we were growing up, that represented the first day of school, didn't it? And when you were 5, it was our first day of kindergarten. And when you went to bed the night before, and Mom thought you were asleep, what did she do? She came into your room, put out brand new clothes on your dresser, hoping to surprise you in the morning for your first day. And what did we all do as soon as she left the room? We got out of bed, took off our pajamas, dressed in our brand new clothes because we couldn't wait. A teacher with our first class were no different. Sharon got up early and blew up 34 balloons, one for every student, wrote their names on the outside, memorized their photos from their school file, and she got to school at 6:30 in the morning, a full hour and a half before the kids came, because she couldn't wait and she didn't want to miss anybody. Surprisingly, at 6:45, she said an old beat-up Ford F-150 pulled into the parking lot, and she watched as two adults screamed at a little girl to get out of their GD truck. The door slammed and the little girl came walking toward room 17. It didn't take Sharon long to recognize her and pull the correct balloon out of the bunch. She reached out and said, "Hi, Joanne." My name is Sharon Fagan, and I'm so excited to have you in my classroom this year. But Joanne didn't greet Sharon back. That doesn't mean she didn't talk. Sharon said that the first student she ever had influenced and guided her for the next 42 years in education, more than any workshop she ever took. Joanne's head stayed down. The following words came out. My mommy and my daddy are getting a T-force. Couldn't pronounce the word, but she sure as heck knew what it meant, don't you think? Here she came to Sharon with her heart heavy, her soul rented at 9 years old. And it was Sharon's job to teach her how to read, how to write, how to be gifted and talented, how to care for her body, her environment, while doing it in a minimum of 13 years. That's all we have in education, K through 12, while maintaining her sanity and the sanity of everyone else in the building. You see, folks, that challenge is, was, and always will be as long as you're connected with public education. But there are a whole lot of people who don't care what comes through our doors. They just care what goes out the other side. Not Sharon. Sharon knew that Joanne and her classmates came to her with their sand buckets only half full. But she also knew it was her job to fill up their sand buckets, not half full in 1 year. Sharon wanted to do it twice as full in half a year. How'd she do that? I taught with her. I know the answer. She avoided convention. Sharon knew that her EMR students, in some ways, weren't any different than her eventual gifted students. They didn't need remediation. They needed acceleration, rising expectations for success, focusing on their problems, solving those problems. And you want to know, to me, what's always been the most important characteristic of an effective teacher? It's to present material in a dynamic way. And Sharon could do that as well as any teacher I've ever seen, and I've seen some of the best. A few of you know that I've given workshops all over this country in how to be a dynamic educator. I never wanted Sharon to take one of my workshops. Why? For the same reason Steve Kerr doesn't want Steph Curry to be like anybody else, because he knew he had a racehorse. And when you have a racehorse like Seabiscuit, a teacher like Sharon, like Loisy, like Katie Early, like Janet, like Gary, when you have teachers like that, and you want that racehorse to run faster, you don't tighten the reins, you loosen them, and they will give you far more than even they ever thought possible. Sharon used to take her EMR students down to the creek behind the school to get their hands and feet dirty and learn about science and our earth by touching and doing. She'd come back to her classroom and open it up at lunchtime to all students, regular ed or special ed, black, white, red, yellow, tan, tall, short, big house, little house, didn't matter. Come on in, we're going to do something exciting today. Until she was told she could no longer have the regular ed kids in her classroom at lunchtime, because too many, according to the principal, were requesting transfers into the EMR class where they could learn more. Don't think of me as the most innovative in the family. I was not. I had nothing on Sharon. From Red Bluff, she spent a year teaching in Sacramento, then went on to Marin County and taught in 2 private schools there for the next 10 years. She loved it. Came to Chico. I took an administrative job, and Sharon taught in the gifted program for the next 25 years. She'd still be teaching today if she hadn't collapsed that day. I think you saw in the obituary that I shared that I described Sharon as the Michelangelo of teaching. I told her that the first year I saw her teach in Marin. Let me just give you a quick history lesson of what I told Sharon. I believe the year was in 1500, And Michelangelo was giving a demonstration to the best sculptors in the world. And they brought him a huge piece of brand new, beautiful marble to do his demonstration on. He said, "No, I don't want this. Let me just go over to the pile of reject stuff that you have over here. I'll use that." "Well, no, you can't use that. You're the great Michelangelo. Use what we got for it." "No, I'm good." And for 4 years, he chipped away and he chipped away. And then, as you know, he eventually revealed probably what's known as the greatest sculpture in the world, right? The statue of David. And when they asked him, "How did you do this? How did you make David out of the old scraps?" He said, "I didn't. I just chipped away to reveal what was already there." That was Sharon as a teacher. And ask any student she's ever had. And if that's how she was as an adult, I knew what you wanted to know. What was she like as a young person, right? So I did the research, and I can name that tune in only 6 words. Mother Butler Memorial School for Girls. Sharon went to a school with 6 words in the title. Wow. I went to Redwood. How boring in comparison. And she had, get this, nuns, who she said taught her morals and ethics and love and caring in a strong academic environment. But she'd often admit a Mother Butler girl's mind wasn't always focused on the academics. Oh no, too often it drifted to the forbidden fruit, which was Saturday night dances with the boys from Bellarmine. Oh yeah, baby. Which only led into a discussion of the inherent differences between Mother Butler girls and Bellarmine boys, all based on those dances. You see, the Bellarmine boys would set their alarms for 6:30 in the morning on those dance Saturdays, immediately get up, slip into a pair of navy blue slacks, sharp crease down the middle, a white long sleeve, freshly ironed button-down shirt, and a pair of black Oxfords, buffed the night before with Dad's old white undershirt using black paste out of a little round can. They would then head straight to the football field, rain or shine, and play tackle all day long in anticipation of the big dance. And at 5 minutes to 7, I mean exactly, they'd head into the gymnasium locker room and take a wet sponge to their smelly armpits and pass around a shared bottle of Aqua Velva. Some of you remember, don't you? How come? Because Dad wore it. But Aqua Velva wasn't popular because it smelled good. It was popular because you could buy an entire bottle for only 49 cents at the local 7-Eleven. But only if you first bought a 10-cent orange Slurpee, because those were the days, my friends. When did I last hear those were the days? I was in a toy store in downtown Chico called Bird in the Hand, and I ran into Bob Condos, Story's dad, who came around the corner, true story, asked him, and said, "Jeff, look what I'm buying for my granddaughter Juniper. I just found it. A package of Jacks and Super Balls." Remember that? He said, "Those were the days, Jeff." Bingo. He was right. And young people in this room, if you want to look up "those were the days" in a Webster's, but you don't know what a Webster's is either, do you? YouTube it. And you know what it'll say under the primary definition for "those were the days"? It'll say Aqua Velva, orange Slurpees, Jacks, and Super Balls, I guarantee you. They would then look in the mirror, smile, put their thumbs up like this, and say, "All right, I'm a Bellarmine Adonis, and I'm ready to put my head on Sharon or Lori's chest," because that would be "those were the days" secondary definition, just below that primary. The girls? You ever heard of Bob Uecker? Only a few of you probably. He was a baseball announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers. And he was most famous for describing a wild pitch that goes sailing over the batter's head as just a little bit high. You know, I always kind of thought if Bob Uecker were to describe the Mother Butler girls versus the Bellarmine boys, he'd probably do the same thing, don't you think? What he'd say would be just a little bit different. Because Mother Butler girls couldn't just go to those dances, not the way Sharon explained it. First, they must prepare. And that's what drove all parents, including Rod and Betts, a little bit goofy because Mother Butler girls traveled in packs. Usually 2 or 3, but numbers as high as 17 are in the Fagin literature. And they all wanted to get ready with Sharon. So that phone never stopped ringing. Mother Betts, Father Rod simply stopped answering. Let's see if you can figure out why. Kathy Keith, Chris Kathy, Jane Christie. Why answer the phone when they all had virtually the same name? Who could keep it straight? Rod and Betts couldn't. Now throw in Jamie and Lori and Mary Jo and put them all in Sharon's bathroom all day long on a Saturday, getting ready for that big dance. And after 6 straight hours of primping, prepping, changing, shining, stuffing, and stuffing some more, out they came, and out the front door they went, leaving a trail of tops, bottoms, bras, and panties on the floor of every room they passed, 90% of which belonged to Sister Barbara. Why ask to borrow if Barbara always said, no effing way? You don't laugh because it's funny, Barbara, you laugh why? Tell everyone, because it's true. Not to worry, however, you want your clothes back, or any of you who ever lent clothes to Sharon, Loisy, Lizzie, Jennifer, you want it back? You all know this. Every stitch of clothing Sharon's ever had, since she was 12 years old, is still in her closet somewhere, in a pile. You don't laugh because it's funny. Oh, Mother Butler. And as Sharon got older, Mother Butler and then Chico State both stopped representing schools to her anymore. They actually were more than that. They represented an era of growing up and of lifelong friendships with just about every one of you. And if one familiar term made her smile, then a walk down memory lane would surely get her to dance. And some of you know that was always my unofficial goal. So come on, Sharon. Let's go back to those Mother Butler and Chico State days. You know, when you and Loisy and Lori thought owning an orange Firebird, riding on the back of a fast motorcycle, or having a baseball player as a boyfriend was the cat's meow. And the words DA, greasers, keen, see you later, alligator, and wild root hair cream were all part of your vocabulary. It's time to get in your T-Bird. Time out. Why would I use that one? Did Sharon drive a Ford Thunderbird? Ever? Of course not. But most of you know, if you ever asked her what kind of car she drove, she'd tell you a blue one. And then she'd scratch her head and she'd guess. I drive a Ford T-Bird, right, Jeff? No, wrong, Sharon. You've driven a Toyota or Toyota product for over 25 consecutive years. Within 2 days, she was back to guessing a T-Bird. So pretty soon, you just learn to accept it. So come on, Sharon, let's get in that T-Bird of yours. Put a little grease in your hair. Put an extra comb in your pocket, as Bob might have said, because we're going to do something today that only your family will soon understand why. Let's go to your mom's favorite lousy restaurant, Chico's own diner. It's called the Cozy Diner. And for those of you who don't know what that is, sure you do. You've all been there, every single one of you. If you grew up in a place called Anytown, America. You know, come on, picture it. Where waitresses still wore aprons. They kept little pencils about this big, put them behind their ear. They wrote your orders down on a tiny 3x5 pad, and the menus were laminated with pictures. That was the very favorite part for Sharon. Her eyeballs got this big that first day as she focused in on the backside of the menu and the ice cream sundaes. It was 6:45 in the morning. That waitress didn't hesitate. It just wasn't the way I expected. She ripped the menu right out of Sharon's fingers. She flipped it to the other side. She shoved it back in. And in her infinite insensitivity, she snapped at her. Don't be silly, dear. It's time for breakfast. The effect on Sharon's countenance was dramatic and immediate. But not to worry, folks. So too was my response. In that case, dear, bring her 2 scoops. And don't forget the chocolate sauce. Wait a minute. Turn around, please. Throw in the biggest bowl of whipped cream you can find. I looked Sharon straight in the eye. I smiled. And are you kidding? Of course I did. I slowly pumped my arm 3 times. And as if on cue, she sang out her first, her greatest Fred Flintstone Yabba Dabba Doo you would ever imagine. You see, our Sharoner, as the Kamey kids called her, deserved every last lick, regardless of the time of day. And I have absolutely no problem accepting full responsibility from any of you if you thought she had a mysterious weight gain during that final chapter, a chapter that I don't mention today to have any of you think that it defined her. It did not. I mentioned it deliberately, and mainly for my son, her siblings, and you, her friends, so that you always remember. It helped reveal her soul. Isn't it interesting that for some of God's children, having a bowl of vanilla ice cream with chocolate sauce and whipped cream embodies happiness? Yet while for the most part, despite all the pain, the frustration, the mediocrity, the sadness, the hurt, the disappointment, for so many, we've lost sight of the nobility of our lives. But not so for our Sharon. The resonant question, why? The salient one-word answer, easy. And today's a day that is so important to remember. Because despite the many hardships and obstacles that she faced, during that painful last lap, your sweet mother bear, Richard, your sister, Fagans, your teacher, your friend, your neighbor, always kept her eye on the donut instead of the whole. And for all of us, may she forever remain an inspirational leader who brought some sense and humanity to our lives. And make no mistake, Richard, despite the many vicissitudes of life that occur growing up, your mom gave you the greatest gift any parent can give a child, in that you can never question how she felt about you. And that, my son, will stay with you forever. It's called an eternal gift. And that brings me to a suggestion for all the Fagans who are here. I admit it. Pretty silly, right? I mean, who would ever make a suggestion to anyone with the last name Fagan, having experienced the efficacy of doing so? Barbara comes into town every now and then. Next time you do that, Barbara, and perhaps every subsequent time, I'm going to ask you for a little favor. When you first drive into town, I want you to turn on Willow Bend and go pick up Don and Loisy. Meet up with Mary and Royce, Roddy and Linda. Jennifer and Mel Baby will have flown in. Go get Richard and then use our T-Bird to make an annual pilgrimage to the Cozy Diner to have a meal to honor both Sharon and your parents. I have to warn you, however, their food isn't very good. not up to any of your standards. But something tells me in this case you might just think otherwise, especially if you order a little dessert. And that brings me to the part that I absolutely dreaded. I had to come up with an ending today. How do you do it? What that really means is, how do you do it right when it's so symbolic of what none of us wanted? A few of you know that in my life, I have written far too many eulogies, but every one of them reminds me of a lesson my Uncle Ernest taught me, the only father figure I had growing up when I was a little boy. And he said, Jeffrey, always remember, it will take so much effort for something to appear effortless. Wow. Don't kid yourself. When doing a eulogy for Sharon's family, who have become my family too, I knew there was no bigger burden than your great expectations today, which is why I promised you that nothing would stand in the way today of giving Sharon one of the finest send-offs ever, with the quality, the care, but especially the dignity that personified who she was. I wrote rough drafts, I tore them up, because I wanted an ending that Sharon would have adored. I finished at 3:30 this morning. When it hit me, if you came into our house over the last few years, you always noticed an old-fashioned jigsaw puzzle on the kitchen table. I think it provided the therapeutic distraction to keep Sharon's mind off of her health. I didn't have the patience till today, when I knew I had to have the resolve to make my first jigsaw puzzle. But this one was going to be the most intricate one of all, that had all the tiny pieces of her life fitting together for you. And when I got to the very last word, only then would you clearly understand just why I told each and every story today in the exact order I told it. And I knew it just had to end, had to, with some words about the circle of life making sense to everyone here. That includes me. But that was only my goal. And for once, I wasn't going to do it by myself. Not this time. I knew the ending had to be inspirational. Sharon deserved that. So did you. But I also knew there was only one way to pull that off. I actually had to have an inspiration. And I eventually figured out that had to come from Richard. It was the right thing to do. Sharon would have wanted that. I just didn't know how to pull it off. But you know me in challenges. I pulled some all-nighters. I read Mom's diary. I turned pages to photo albums. And I watched every single one of those old family VCR tapes. And absolutely, young people in this room, if you don't know what a VCR is, what should you do? Eventually, I found it. Richard shared something so poignant and touching. It's all I needed to write what I hope will be the most appropriate and meaningful closure for everyone in this room, but especially for Richard and especially for Sharon's siblings. It had to do with one of his inventions when he was a little boy. Richard and his endless inventions. Some were pretty creative. This one will never get him on Shark Tank. There is nothing to sell. And the only interested people in the product, they're sitting right next to him. So what do you think it was? It was a simple sleep aid, better than the infamous Fagan fan. Oh my God, even your fan got its own puzzle piece. You see, everyone with the last name Fagan is addicted to an old-fashioned physical fan. They plug it into the wall at night, helps them sleep. But that fan only helps them after they're asleep. And Richard was going through some stereotypical 7-year-old blues, and he needed help getting to sleep. So he came up with a solution, soon to be called his next invention. He said what worked better than anything else was closing his eyes and concentrating on something that always made him happy. What a concept. That 100% of the time warmed his heart. And when he was only 7, he said it was an image of his mother, Mother Bear, as he called her then, to help him drift off. You see, he learned that the best pictures in life aren't the ones we have outside in the room. Kodak can't come close to replicating the number of pixels that we can create. When an image is first developed in our hearts, we have a better lab than they do. I reminded Sharon of that invention during her final days, and it resulted in the second to last time I saw her cry. It was time for a life lesson, and I chose to give it to her, knowing how important it was to everyone here that a seeming impending darkness be instead met with light and hope and positivity. So I took her outside to one of her favorite places in the whole world, our hot tub, where most of you know Sharon spent endless hours looking at the night sky. And I'd always bounce out a few minutes later, my typical silliness, and I'd ask her to point out the Big Dipper to me. Sure, I knew. It was just a routine we had. And those of you who are a former student, you'd laugh at my simple challenge to her because you remember Sharon as Professor Science, an astronomy fan. It would be like asking me to point out Steph Curry on a basketball court. Her answer was immediate. It's right there, Jeff. Yeah, but that's not really what I want tonight. Tonight is different. Tonight you're going to tell me why it's called the Big Dipper, okay? Oh, come on, Jeff, that's an easy one. I used to teach that to all my students. It's just an old kitchen ladle. Everyone knows that. Look at the shape. That's known as the handle, and that's known as the cup. Can you see it? I just don't agree with you. Because I've been part of your family for over 40 years now. It's affected my vision. I see most everything through your eyes now, Sharon. Through Fagan glasses. So put them back on, look again. But this time I want you to look through them as the Fagan you are. And now look at the shape. You're going to see a back and a lumpy seat cushion, just like your big chair. Can you see it? And if we're looking at heaven, check out that vantage point, Sharon. All your hospice team was worried about you losing weight at the end. They all got it wrong. You lost weight for a great reason. Because now that big and lumpy chair has a little more room. And your beautiful and kind Mother Betsy and special Daddy-O, as you called him, have both waited an awfully long time to not only share that space with you again. Oh, Sharon, they've waited to be invited. Because when you go to the championship game, you remember this old adage. You always go home with the person that brought you to the dance. There are moments, folks. A few of you call them epiphanies, where certain words have their impact. For Sharon, this was one of those times. Her knees buckled. She put her arms out against the wall so as not to fall. She slowly sat down and she started to cry again for the last time. But it was okay because it meant she understood. And sometimes, I caution you all, please please, only sometimes, the best response you can give to somebody who's crying is permission to do so. Sharon, I know you're in this room right now. We all feel your presence. And I'm going to take advantage of it by doing something a bit out of the ordinary. There's a surprise. I'm going to speak directly to you. Just you and me, babe. And tell you right now the same thing I told you that night. You are not done. You still have one more chip to do. Wow. The final puzzle piece coming together. I saved it for you, Sharon. And just like Michelangelo and that statue of David I talked about earlier, you have to do the finishing touches on what will complete the Davids you started in all of us. Davids, by the way, that you always saw in people. Today, I get to be the one to tell you, those were Davids you helped carve in everyone you touched. But there's one final thing. You asked me the other day what you could do for Richard and me. Wow. You were the one struggling, and yet you wanted to do something for us. Do you remember what I did, Sharon? I got down on my knee, I leaned over, and I whispered in your ear, "Don't you worry, babe. You've already done that. You've given Richard and me everything." It made you smile. And you asked if you could give me a rain check. Now, everybody knows I don't accept presents very easily. I always say no, thank you. I'm taking this present from you, Sharon. I'm cashing it in right now because there is something I want. And I mention it with the same goal in mind that we tried to give our son, that your siblings model so well. This one's going to be about enhancing lives again. Of all the people in this room you love so very much. It's this big. But it's a start to mend a whole lot of broken hearts today and give us all a tiny bit of comfort and joy. And when you do this, I guarantee you, Richard won't be the only one closing his eyes late at night, turning into a little child again as we look for our guardian angel to say rockabye, to say sweet baby dreams. So I only ask for this one small thing before letting you go. Every single night, when you're sitting in that big chair, looking over this world of ours at us, right back at you, babe. We're looking for you. But remember how you'd laugh and ask if in your next life you could finally be organized? I worked on that for you, came up with a solution. I'm calling it my first invention to compete with Richard. It's a good one. You want to be organized, then just do those check-ins with everyone in here in order. You know, every single night when we're sleeping, I want you to look in on Loisy first. She'd like that. How many times did you tell me that over 58 years ago, she became your sister too? Why should tonight be any different? Then zoom over to Tennessee and look in on Jen Jen and Mel Baby, the whole family. Jen Jen, who we once took in, and you always treated her like a daughter. So watch over her. She'll tell you she became one. Your former students, Sharon, many of them are here and they adored you. So keep them safe. And remember, you made them a promise that you'd let them know when you help relax heaven's dress standards after God sees some of your crazy outfits. The Mother Butler crew, every one of them. And Lori, your childhood BFF of over 73 years. Wow. What a bond the two of you shared. So maintain that bond, Sharon, with Lori and her entire wonderful family. Your teacher lunch bunch, who kept your spirits up with their regular get-togethers. Janet and Wendy and Margie and Debbie. What a difference they made. You will always be part of that group, Sharon. Your other buddies. You have another faux sister in Shawnee Girl. And Lizzie and Sue, Kathy, Katie, Zanita, Shirley, Mary, and sweet Marilyn. They all need you. My good buddy Aaron, who has always been there for us. It's time to give back now, Sharon. Our newest of family, Pune and Sash, Peggy and Ellie, who helped teach our world we can be a better place. When people are judged not by their countries, but by their hearts. Uncle Larry, who adored you and you him, he's going to need you too, as will Lynn and Rodney and their families. Don't forget our neighbors who have been so good to us for so long. All your colleagues, your friends, and then, of course, your brother. Both your sisters and me will be waiting up for you. But always, babe, save that last glance for Richard. He can remain your captain, okay? And when he closes his eyes every night searching for your image, this time I want you to wait. You wait until the very moment the two of you lock your eyes in on each other to slowly pump your arm 3 times, would you? And when you've completed all of that, for your incredible baby brother, your little Roderick Valakut Fagan, when you're there at nighttime every night for your little Mary Madeline Fagan, when you comfort Mother and Papa Bear in that chair, always smile on your dear baby sister, little Barbara Jean Fagan, and for all of us, when you help the angels of heaven protect and give life's daily joy as you always wanted to give our son, then, Sharon, only then, will God help you understand the final words I have for you. You see, babe, when you do it for our family, Abadi Familia, only the location of that vantage point has changed for you. Und bitte nicht vergessen. Thank you.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, while I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Yabba dabba doo.
For the last part, we just have a 3-minute short video tribute. I want the family to come on up so that I don't look like an idiot all by myself. You're going to watch it from up here. Loisi, Pune, everyone who spoke, come on up, and her family, come on up, because we're going to watch it together, okay? Come on up. Seth. You're when it ends, it'll just end on a slide. There'll be no final words. Sharon would have simply said, class dismissed. So hang in there. This is it.
In the quiet, I hear you laugh again, and I hold it close. We met where the bells would ring at St. Mark's and San Rafael. 2 teachers with chalk on our hands, dreams tucked in the stories we tell. You walked in gorgeous and bright, no need for fancy clothes to glow. And I knew Sharon in that moment, I'd never let that love go. Now time has changed the room we're in, but it can't change what you gave. Sharon still shines in the morning light, in every lesson and every night. Love like yours won't fade away. It finds a way, it finds a way. I'm here, you're Jeff with a grateful heart. You're still my home, even apart. You fly on the court with fearless feet, a tennis smile, a steady aim. Then cook in our kitchen, no recipe, and somehow it tasted like your name. You held your sisters close in your arms, and your brother too, through thick and thin. And oh, the way you loved our boy. Richard's world began with you in it. We built our dream home up in Chico and filled it up with real life. Then came the call we couldn't stop, but you met it brave and true. Sharon still shines in the morning light, in every lesson and every night. Love like yours won't fade away. It finds a way, it finds a way. I'm here, you're Jeff with a grateful heart. You're still my home, even apart. 11 years ago, the news came hard. Cancer took what it could take. Left lung gone and part of your liver, but it never took taught me how to breathe through loss, how to live when life won't bend. And Sharon, you still lead me like the truest kind of friend. Sharon still shines in the morning light, in every lesson, in every night. Love like yours won't fade away. It finds a way, it finds a way. I'm here, you're Jeff with a grateful heart. You're still my home, even apart. Sharon still shines when I say your name. In Chico skies, it feels the same. Love like yours won't fade away. It finds a way, it finds a way. I'm here, you're Jeff with a grateful heart. You're still my home, even apart. So I'll carry you day by day till we meet